September 21st, 2024, Bengaluru, Saturday. Using a spare key from Mahalakshmi's family, we entered her apartment as not only was the door locked, but her phone was also switched off. The smell coming from the flat was so bad that standing inside for even a moment was unbearable. Since it was a one-bedroom apartment, the main door opened directly into the single room. Mahalakshmi's mother, Meena, was the first to enter, followed by her elder daughter, Lakshmi, who was recording on her mobile phone. Both of them somehow covered their faces and noses and entered the room where hundreds of flies were buzzing around. Lakshmi checked the attached combined bathroom and toilet, but there was no filth there that could have been the cause of the stench. The room was small, without a bed, just a mat and bedsheet on the floor. A large black suitcase was placed next to it. However, Mahalakshmi's mother's steps and gaze stopped at one spot, where the smell and the swarm of flies were the strongest: the fridge. The fear of something terrible happening prevented her from opening the fridge. Lakshmi checked the washroom again for confirmation, and when she turned around, her mother had opened the fridge. As soon as the door was opened, an unbearable stench came out, forcing her to step back. Before they could process what was happening, within seconds, they saw something so horrifying that they screamed. Inside the 3 shelves of the fridge lay Mahalakshmi's body, cut into small pieces. On the top shelf was her leg, and on the bottom shelf was her severed head. No one could bear to witness such a scene, especially when it had happened to a loved one. I don't think they will ever forget this moment in their lifetime. Neighbors gathered after hearing the screams. As soon as the police were informed, they arrived at the scene. The smell in the room was so strong that even the police found it difficult to step inside, so they all wore double masks. What they saw was a scene unlike anything they had ever encountered. The news spread quickly on television and social media. When a case receives heavy media coverage, many facts and data are either incorrect or intentionally distorted to make it as sensational as possible for mainstream media to boost TRPs. Hence, it's crucial for us to cross-verify any facts we present and ensure they align with common sense. When this news broke, the crime scene descriptions given by news channels were very different from the reality. After the police arrived, forensic teams and medical staff also reached the crime scene for investigation. There were no signs of forced entry into the apartment, indicating that the killer did not break in by force, making it clear that Mahalakshmi probably knew the killer well. The media exaggerated the crime scene, claiming there were bloodstains all over the floor and small pieces of flesh scattered around, but the reality was the complete opposite. As seen in this clip, there were no scattered pieces of flesh or blood on the floor. In fact, when the forensic team cleaned the floor using a luminol chemical, they reported that the perpetrator had meticulously cleaned the crime scene, leaving few traces behind. Luminol reacts with blood, emitting a blue light that reveals even the smallest particles of blood invisible to the naked eye. The body parts and the refrigerator were sealed and sent to the lab for investigation. Initially, it was thought there were 30 body parts, but as the investigation progressed, it was revealed that Mahalakshmi's body had been cut into 59 pieces. On September 20th, 2024, Friday, in the Vyalikaval area near Basappa Garden, Bengaluru, the residents of a 3-story building were struggling with a strong stench that had made life unbearable. This smell had been there for several days, but now it had become intolerable. When people began to search for the source, they realized it was coming from a flat on the 1st floor of the building. Since the main door of that flat was locked, the neighbors contacted the landlord, Jivan Ram, to complain about the smell. 29-year-old Mahalakshmi lived in that 1-bedroom flat on rent. When the landlord called her phone was switched off. The smell had become unbearable, so it was essential to open the flat. The landlord pulled out Mahalakshmi's rental agreement, which listed her mother and elder sister Lakshmi as emergency contacts. Lakshmi was informed that there was a terrible smell coming from her younger sister Mahalakshmi's house. The door was locked, and her phone was switched off. Lakshmi shared this with her mother and brother, Hukum Singh. Since it was already 7 p.m., they decided to go to Mahalakshmi's house the next morning. The next day, Mahalakshmi's mother Meena Rana, her elder sister Lakshmi, and Lakshmi's husband Imran arrived at the building. The smell was so strong that it was noticeable even outside the building. The locked door, the switched-off phone, and the smell were enough to create a sense of foreboding in anyone's heart. but the reality was far more brutal and horrifying than the fear. The forensic team revealed that the body parts were in an advanced state of decomposition, infested with maggots, indicating that the murder had taken place several days earlier. Since the body was stored inside the fridge, the smell had not spread outside the house for many days. The police began their investigation by first looking into Mahalakshmi's background, which opened the door to further clues in the case. Mahalakshmi's mother, Meena Rana, and her father, Charan Singh, were originally from Tikapati, Nepal. Lakshmi had changed her name to Shahida Basu, while Mahalakshmi got married to Hemanta Das, and they had a daughter together. However, since September 2023, Mahalakshmi had started living separately from her husband, Hemanta. In such cases, the first suspicion usually falls on the husband, which is why Hemanta Das was suspect number 1 on the police's list. Hemanta owned a mobile accessories shop, and Mahalakshmi worked at a clothing outlet called Fashion Factory in Malleshwaram. Hemanta told the police that Mahalakshmi was having an affair with someone, which led to frequent fights between them. They hadn't divorced, but she had left Hemanta. Initially, she took their daughter with her, but after 4 months, she sent the child back to Hemanta, who was now raising her alone. Mahalakshmi would visit her daughter every 10-15 days and had last come to his shop 25-30 days ago. After leaving Hemanta, Mahalakshmi stayed with her mother for a few days, but later shifted to the Swan BHK apartments in Vyalikaval. When neighbors were questioned, they revealed that Mahalakshmi had moved there about 5 or 6 months earlier. Since she would leave for work at 9:30 in the morning and return late at around 10:30 at night, she didn't interact much with people in the area. However, some neighbors mentioned that they often saw her with a man who had even stayed at her apartment for a few days. This point became crucial for the police, who then set up several teams to investigate Mahalakshmi's background thoroughly. One team checked call details, another combed through CCTV footage from the nearby area, and yet another called Hemanta in for further questioning. Hemanta and Mahalakshmi had been married for 6 years, but their relationship started to sour when Hemanta began to suspect Mahalakshmi's character. Hemanta gave the police 3 names: the manager of the store where she worked, a common friend, and the third person, who Hemanta believed was responsible for their relationship's downfall. One day, Hemanta secretly checked Mahalakshmi's phone and found chats between her and this person, which led to the breakup. That person was Ashraf, a barber from Bangalore who hailed from Uttarakhand. Due to the affair, Hemanta had filed a complaint against Ashraf at the Neela Mangala police station, to which Mahalakshmi retaliated by filing a complaint against her husband for physical assault. The affair of a Hindu woman with a man from another religion and her body being found in pieces inside a fridge sparked widespread media coverage, drawing parallels with the infamous Shraddha Aftab murder case from May 2022. In that case, Aftab had killed his live-in partner, Shraddha Walker, and chopped her body into 35 pieces, storing them in a 300-liter fridge. However, despite the public speculation, much of what Hemanta told the police turned out to be true upon verification, and he was cleared as a suspect. The police then shifted their focus to Ashraf, now the prime suspect. However, before anything could be proven, Ashraf was subjected to a media trial. The police, avoiding the media, brought Ashraf in for interrogation. Ashraf admitted to the affair, but claimed that he had distanced himself from Mahalakshmi months ago after the fight with Hemanta and the police case. Ashraf's statement was verified through location tracking and call records, and he was cleared of involvement in the murder. The police then turned their attention to 2 other suspects and sent a team to the clothing store where Mahalakshmi worked for further questioning. However, new leads from call records and investigations cleared these 2 suspects as well, and a new name emerged. The police became suspicious when they discovered that Mahalakshmi had come to the store on September 1st and had taken leave the next day, the same day that one of the store's employees also disappeared. When the call records of both Mahalakshmi and this employee were examined, it was found that they had been in frequent contact for quite some time, with numerous calls and messages exchanged between them. They had also spoken on November 2nd. When the police tried to call this employee, his phone was switched off. The last dialed number in his call records led the police to Mukti Ranjan, who lived in Bangalore. When Mukti Ranjan was questioned, the police learned that the missing employee's name was Mukti Ranjan Roy, Mukti's brother. The police were closing in on the culprit, but they feared that any leaks from the investigation could hinder their progress. Hence, they kept details of the investigation hidden from the media. Statements from Mukti Ranjan's two brothers and mother helped the police piece together the case. To understand the full case, we go back 6 months, when Mukti Ranjan began working at the same clothing store where he met Mahalakshmi. Their friendship soon turned into a romantic relationship. They not only worked together, but also spent holidays together. Mukti bought Mahalakshmi expensive gifts, and he knew almost everything about her past, which didn't bother him. However, after a while, Mukti noticed a change in Mahalakshmi's behavior, which bothered him. She had begun distancing herself from him and spent less time with him, even during work hours, where she would spend hours talking to someone on the phone. Just as Hemanta had suspected before, now Mukti suspected Mahalakshmi of having an affair. Mahalakshmi had a short temper and would get angry in such confrontations. This led to frequent arguments between her and Mukti, and in her aggression, she would sometimes hit him, regardless of time or place. However, they would eventually reconcile. Mukti was emotionally attached to Mahalakshmi on a deeper level. In scenarios like this, even though the relationship might become toxic, there are moments in life where staying together is impossible, but leaving each other is just as hard. On September 1st, both of them went to work for the last time. The next day, on September 2nd, Mukti called Mahalakshmi, telling her that he was coming to meet her. However, Mahalakshmi refused. When Mukti insisted on coming anyway, Mahalakshmi filed a police complaint against him. The Ashoknagar police not only arrested Mukti, but also beat him and took the 850 rupees he had in his pocket. Angry from both the beating and the loss of his money, Mukti still wanted to resolve the issue by talking to Mahalakshmi. So, he called her again, requesting a meeting, and this time Mahalakshmi agreed and allowed him to come to her apartment in Vyalikaval. That night, Mukti went to Mahalakshmi's apartment, where a fight broke out between them because Mahalakshmi was pressuring Mukti for marriage. She wanted to marry him because he provided her financial support. However, Mukti had doubts about her character, suspecting that her intentions were driven by greed. As the argument escalated, Mahalakshmi, as usual, raised her hand to hit Mukti, but this time, Mukti's anger went out of control. In a fit of rage, he hit Mahalakshmi on the head with a heavy object. Seeing her bleeding, instead of calming down, Mukti's hatred intensified. He strangled her, killing her. It was nighttime, and the date had already turned to September 3rd. Mukti sat in the room with Mahalakshmi's body for a long time, not knowing how to save himself now that the crime had been committed. Mukti thought about hanging Mahalakshmi's body from a fan to make it look like a suicide, but there was no way for him to reach that high. So, he dropped the idea and spent the entire night thinking about how to dispose of the body. The next morning, at 11 a.m., he left the apartment and went to a nearby shop to buy a sharp knife. The police later found footage of Mukti buying the knife from a nearby utensil shop on the CCTV while searching for the murder weapon. Using that knife, Mukti began cutting the body into small pieces. Initially, his plan was to pack the pieces into a suitcase and dispose of them, and this suitcase was even seen in a video clip. However, the apartment was in a crowded area where people stayed outside their homes late into the night, so he was afraid of getting caught. Then Mukti noticed the 165-liter refrigerator in the house. He thought that by putting the body pieces in the fridge, the smell would not spread for a few weeks, and he could dispose of them little by little. He filled the fridge with the pieces and cleaned the entire house thoroughly, leaving no trace behind. After locking the house late at night, he left. Mukti wasn't a professional criminal, and the guilt of killing Mahalakshmi began eating him up from the inside. He realized that he had made an irreparable mistake in his rage, and he also worried about his family, not wanting them to be implicated. But in the mess he had created, his mind had stopped working. After wandering for 2 days, he called his brother, Mukti Ranjan, who lived in Bangalore, asking him to leave the house and the city. When Mukti asked for the reason, Mukti said he would explain everything in person. When they met, Mukti confessed his crime, telling Mukti how Mahalakshmi had ruined his life. He had spent lakhs of rupees on her, even gifting her a gold chain, yet she had affairs with others and threatened to kill him when confronted. After explaining everything, Mukti urged Mukti to leave the city, and he himself left Bangalore for Berhampur in Odisha, where his brother Satya Ranjan was studying engineering. Mukti stayed at Satya's hostel for a few days before leaving again. But the inner turmoil he was facing brought him back to his brother's hostel. Sensing something was wrong, Satya asked Mukti what was bothering him. Mukti couldn't hold it in anymore and told Satya the whole truth. By September 21st, this case had come to light, and like many criminals, Mukti was keeping tabs on the investigation. He realized that the police were closing in on him, and that it was only a matter of time before he got caught. So, on the night of September 24th, Mukti left Berhampur and arrived in Badrak at his parents' house. His mother noticed that he seemed very troubled and asked him about it. Mukti told her everything except for the details of how he committed the murder. On the morning of September 25th at 4 a.m., Mukti took his father's scooter and left the house. Not far from home, people passing by found a body hanging from a tree in a cemetery. When the Odisha police arrived at the scene, they found a scooter and a bag containing a laptop, some clothes, a mobile phone, and a diary near the body. Upon identification, the body was none other than Mukti Ranjan, who had taken his own life. The Odisha police informed Mukti's family and the Bangalore police, who had been looking for him. The Bangalore police found a note in Mukti's diary, written in broken English, in which he confessed to his crime. He also mentioned Mahalakshmi's mistreatment and the police's corruption in taking a bribe. The note was dated September 13, 2024, indicating that Mukti had written it before the police closed in on him, knowing he would eventually be caught. The Bangalore police tried their best to reach Mukti, but he left the world before they could catch him. Had Mukti Ranjan informed the police earlier, perhaps Mukti would still be alive. But the full blame doesn't lie on Mukti either, as no one is prepared to handle such situations. In such moral dilemmas, people often stand by their loved ones, disregarding laws and rules. This case shows how Mahalakshmi's greed and deceit not only cost her life, but also destroyed several families.